Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today, we're diving into the treasure chest, or maybe a silver mine, of Endeavour Silver Corp's Form 40F. Don't worry, it's not as boring as it sounds, unless you find talk about risks and financials boring. And for our main hook, we're going to see how Endeavour Silver fared in the past year, if they're ready to dig into the future, and whether there's any gold or silver buried in the legalese. This is their annual report covering the year that ended in December of 2024. It's like a yearly checkup for the company where they tell the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, all about their business, what they own, how much money they made, and what they are planning. First off, Endeavour Silver is a Canadian company, so they get to play by slightly different rules than US companies when it comes to reporting. It's like using kilometers instead of miles. Their financial statements follow something called International Financial Reporting Standards, or IFRS, which aren't exactly the same as the accounting rules used in the United States. Now, before we get too deep, a quick heads up. This report is full of forward-looking statements. These are basically the company's guesses about the future, things like how much silver they'll dig up, how much it will cost, and what their plans are for new mines. Keep in mind that these are just educated guesses and reality might turn out differently. Many things can affect these predictions, from metal prices to political problems. Another important note for those of you in the United States: Canadian and US reporting practices aren't identical. So, when Endeavour talks about their mineral reserves and resources, it might not line up perfectly with how a US company would report the same thing. It's like comparing apples and oranges, they're both fruit but different. Speaking of Canada, all the dollar amounts in the report are in US dollars unless they say otherwise. Just so you know, at the end of December 2024, one US dollar got you about 1.44 Canadian dollars. So if you're looking at a number, say $1 million, it's actually $1.44 Canadian dollars. Let's talk about something called internal control over financial reporting. It's a fancy way of saying that the company has checks and balances in place to make sure their financial numbers are accurate. The CEO and CFO, that's the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer, they have to sign off on this, saying that they believe the company's financial reporting is solid. Basically, they're saying they're not cooking the books. Now let's peek behind the curtain and see how the big bosses get paid. Endeavour has a compensation committee made up of independent directors. This committee decides how much the CEO and other top executives should get paid. They look at things like how well the company is doing and how the executives are performing. The CEO isn't allowed to be in the room when they're talking about his pay, which makes sense. There's also a corporate governance and nominating committee, which is like the ethics police for the company. They're in charge of making sure the company is following good governance practices. They also help find and nominate people to be on the board of directors. So they play a big role in shaping who's in charge and how the company is run. Another important committee is the Audit Committee. These folks are responsible for keeping an eye on the company's financial reporting. They work with the company's outside auditors, KPMG, to make sure everything is on the up and up. They also review the company's financial statements and make sure they're accurate. They basically ensure that the financial statements are credible. Speaking of KPMG, let's see how much Endeavour paid them for their services. In 2024, KPMG billed Endeavour about 1.16 million Canadian dollars for audit fees. These are the fees for checking the company's financial statements. They didn't pay them anything for tax advice or other services. Endeavour has a code of business conduct and ethics, which is like a rule book for how everyone at the company is supposed to behave. It covers everything from avoiding conflicts of interest to treating people fairly. If anyone breaks the rules, there will be consequences. The important thing here is they publicly share the code of ethics and shareholders are allowed to request a physical copy of it. Now let's talk about money. Endeavour's cash needs are discussed in their management's discussion and analysis, or this is where they explain how much cash they need to run their business, invest in new projects, and pay off debts. They'll talk about things like how much it costs to mine silver, how much they're spending on exploration, and how much debt they have to pay back. Endeavour stock is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, or NYSE. But because they're a Canadian company, they don't have to follow all the same rules as US companies. The New York Stock Exchange allows them to follow some of their home country practices. They do have to explain any big differences in their governance practices, though. For example, what percentage of shareholders are needed for major company decisions? One difference is the quorum requirement for shareholder meetings. This is the minimum number of shareholders that need to be present for a meeting to be valid. For Endeavour, it's pretty low. Shareholders who own just 5% of the company's shares need to be present. Endeavour has a clawback policy, which means they can take back money that was wrongly paid to executives. This usually happens if the company has to restate its financial results because of some kind of error. During the year ended in December of 2024, there was no compensation taken back from executives. Finally, at the end of the report, there's a list of exhibits. These are all the documents that are attached to the report, like the financial statements, the MD&A, and certifications from the CEO and CFO. You can dig into these if you want to learn even more about the company. Now, let's take a broader look at Endeavour Silver. In terms of strengths, Endeavour seems to be really focused on growing. They're investing in new mines and projects, which could pay off big time if silver prices go up. They've also got a solid team of people in charge, with committees overseeing everything from pay to ethics. However, there are some weaknesses to keep in mind. Mining is a risky business, and Endeavour is exposed to all sorts of challenges, from fluctuating metal prices to political instability in the countries where they operate. They also rely heavily on a few key mines, so if something goes wrong at one of those mines, it could hurt their bottom line. Also, the report mentions estimates and predictions, so it will be very important to look at how well they did in the past to have more confidence about their projections. One notable risk is the price of silver. If silver prices fall, Endeavour's profits will take a hit. They also face risks related to environmental regulations and community relations. If they don't manage these risks carefully, it could damage their reputation and their ability to operate. Overall, Endeavour Silver seems to be a company with a lot of potential, but also a fair amount of risk. If you're thinking about investing, it's important to do your own research and understand the challenges they face. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe for more corporate deep dives. Let me know in the comments what SEC filing you'd like me to decode next.